When I started this YouTube channel, I set out with a photography first mindset. I wanted photos to be the main focus for each video, though as I've learned more about cinematography, editing and colour grading, I found myself spending more and more time considering how to get the best footage to accompany my images. I've used Lightroom to edit my photography for over 10 years now, and have always been after the elusive film look. Naturally, when I started creating my street diary videos, I craved the same look in my footage. I've dabbled with several methods to achieve the film look in Davinci Resolve, including their built-in LUTs plus creator LUTs like Sir's Vision LUT Pack. All of them are good and get you in the ballpark, but LUTs alone don't have the flexibility and amount of options available to you as Dehancer, which we're talking about today. So, first things first, what camera am I using? I use a Fujifilm XT-5 for all my digital photography and video. It's perhaps not your first choice as a video camera, but the specs are more than enough for what I use it for, and really, the best thing about it is how quickly I can switch from taking a photo to recording a video. I shoot in f-log2 for maximum dynamic range and flexibility. I bring my clips into Davinci Resolve, the free version, and once I've constructed a rough edit, I begin to think about colour. I've been trialling Dehancer for about a month now, and I found it to be a massively powerful tool to simplify my workflow and give me the best film emulation results I've had so far. I start with a simple node structure, a colour space transform to convert my footage from f-log2 to Davinci wide gamut, then a node for Dehancer, and finally another CST to convert to Rec 709. I go to Effects and then find Dehancer and apply it to the middle node. I need to change the source to Davinci wide gamut as this is the colour space we're editing in. You can see from the off it's got a bit of a look to it already, though let's disable everything and start from the beginning. Firstly, I like to set the exposure and white balance with Dehancer. Of course, there are so many ways you can do this, and I do sometimes combine this with other nodes to Resolve's lift, gamma and gain tools to nail exposure and white balance. Though what's most important to me is speed and simplicity, which Dehancer provides with this control panel. I dial in roughly where I want to be with the help of the scopes, and then start to look at building a film look. The film tab here is one of the features that sets this plugin apart for me. The amount of motion picture, colour negative and black and white film profiles you can have here is amazing. I spent most of my time with the Kodak Vision profiles, as this is common for film looks and is also the film I shoot stills with in my film camera. For a bright, daylight balanced scene like this, I might go with 50D. I like to work in order of which settings have the most impact on the image, so next I go to the print section. This simulates popular film prints. The Kodak Endura glossy paper film print gives a more true to life look, though I'm going to choose the classic Kodak 2383 look here. The target white setting adds warmth or coolness into the image, and here is where I make finer exposure adjustments. I tend to find the contrast to be too strong most times with this option, so I dial it back slightly. I also like to tweak the colour density to make certain colours pop. Now we're in the ballpark that I'm used to with LUTs, though Dehancer allows you to take it some steps further with more controls. I love colourful images, and this is looking quite desaturated at the moment, so let's go to the Film Developer tab, enable it, and use Colour Boost to add some saturation in. This is one of the most pleasing ways I found to add natural colour back into the image after you've got the film look on the go. I tend to hover around 38 to 40. Just below this are the film compression settings. This compresses the shadows and highlights to align closer with how film behaves. Now we're getting there. The expand tool here is really handy at this point for realigning the exposure, since we've added more contrast with the film print and affected the highlights with the compression. You can lift or drop your black and white points to a level that you're happy with, or use the scopes as a rough guide. I tend not to use the colour head settings, which add split tones into the shadows, midtones and highlights. Now we're onto the more obvious characteristics of film, the grain, halation and bloom. Grain in Dehancer is interesting as it rebuilds the image with grain rather than simply overlaying it like I had been doing before. The size and amount of the grain is recommended through profiles through 8mm through to 65mm. The ISO number determines how much grain like real film. The higher the ISO, the more visible the grain is. Applying grain also affects the sharpness of the image, which is a nice touch. I find the grain in Dehancer to be too strong, so I prefer to use the finer grain option at 65mm with the lowest ISO. I apply about 6 to 8% for a subtle look. Next is halation, which is the red glow you get around highlight areas. What's cool about this as well is that you have options to apply or remove the remjet layer, a black coating on motion picture film designed to reduce halation. Again, I find this to be a really strong effect and prefer to use it sparingly on indoor scenes mostly, so we'll leave it off this time. Then we have bloom, which is an alternative to the glow effect I was using before in Resolve. This adds bloom to the highlights and creates a dreamlike effect within the image. Similarly to the grain, the amount is determined from 8mm through to 65mm. I prefer 65 to 70mm here, with amplify set at around 30%. I'll use the vignette setting if my subject is centered and want to draw more attention to the middle of the frame. This shot is a good example, so I'll enable that as it comes. The other settings add more characteristics of film, though I find it only useful in more niche scenarios. Film damage adds imperfections like scratches and dust. Film breath creates subtle shifts in exposure, colour or brightness between frames. Gate weave simulates the slight shifting or wobbling of the image due to mechanical inconsistencies in film projectors or cameras, and overscan enables film borders, which is a nice effect to have if you're doing something like a nostalgic sequence. At this point I'll just go back through any settings to make any minor adjustments, though I've created my film look on only one node within Resolve. Generally, if it's an indoor setting I'm working with, I will opt for a tungsten balanced film like 200T or 500T. The workflow is the same, though I might need to cool it down more as this look generally comes with a warmer look out of the box. Having used Dehancer on a few edits now, I've had a few observations and then we'll talk about pros and cons. This plugin leans more on the stronger side when building a look. Everything comes in at 110%, so I always find myself pulling back rather than adding more. Like other editing software such as Adobe Lightroom, making adjustments in one place can affect other areas quite drastically. Contrast always seems to be what I'm battling with, so you have to be patient and accept that it's going to take a few extra tweaks to get an image you're happy with. Now, here are the pros for Dehancer, and there are many for me. If you're looking to get into video from a photography background like I have done, this plugin functions more like Lightroom or Capture One and is more familiar from the get-go with its functions compared to Resolve. I still think it's really valuable to learn how Resolve's controls work, as in combination with Dehancer they can be very powerful, though hopefully, as I've shown, you can get to a place you're happy with just with this plugin. It's very simple to install and get started. I've been using it with Davinci Resolve, but it is available in Final Cut Pro, Premiere Pro or After Effects. You download and install it, open it up in your editing software, drop in your license key and you're good to go. As I said, speed and simplicity are the most important things for me, with photography being my priority, so Dehancer is good for simplifying your node trees and getting a consistent look quickly. The addition of exposure, white balance, colour space transform and contrast tools all being available in one place is a win for me. There are so many options for film profiles and film prints. I like to experiment and change things up quite frequently, so the amount of options I get from Dehancer helps me to stay creative. I like how the film developer colour boost setting adds saturation in a really pleasing way, better than Davinci's built-in saturation slider. Dehancer gives me features I can't use in the free version of Resolve, such as film grain and an easy method to add convincing halation. Dehancer is not the perfect solution for small creators though, with one big problem for me, and that's the high cost. At around £350 to £360, this is a massively expensive tool for a small creator to invest in when there are other more affordable ways to get within the same ballpark. And the pricing model is a bit weird for me. A lifetime license makes sense, and this is where you're going to get the most value, though I can't see the use of spending £120 to £240 for a limited time license where you'll only have it for 3 months to a year. I guess this model makes sense if it's a tool that's being used for a specific project, though most creators like me want something like this forever, or paid for until it's not needed or wanted anymore. I'd prefer a rent-to-own pricing model or monthly subscription service, and think Dehancer would attract more casual filmmakers who want access to high-end tools. That being said though, with the one-off cost, this is worth it in the long run. You'll have a tool that's always going to give you good results, lots of film profiles that are some of the best I've come across, and is updated with enhancements and new features. If you're interested, to make it a bit cheaper, I have a 10% discount code available here and in the description. Add this at checkout and save a little bit of money. Another small complaint is the default settings when I add this to a node. You have to scroll down and disable all the tools to start from scratch, which gets quite annoying. To overcome this, you can create power grades in Davinci Resolve with your favourite film simulations, though it would be nice to configure the plugin to start with nothing enabled when building a look. Overall, my month with Dehancer has sped up my workflow and made it easier than ever before for me to emulate my favourite film stocks in my filmmaking. It's a premium product that will give you the value over time, it's just a steep one to stomach as a smaller creator. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think about Dehancer in the comments.